Good morning, Eduardo. It's July 13th, and we're recording the episode 8th of Water Lobby. We've come this far, and we are still growing really fast. I know. And yeah,
Yeah.
this episode is going to be pretty information heavy for a lot of people, especially because we both are, in floodplain services area. We both provide, services to people in regards to floodplain delineation
Oh,
and
here.
oh yeah, you have a map. I have a lot of similar maps on my screen right now, but nothing in my background. Um, yeah, so how's your day going so far? And have you been like tracking the news of all the buildings that were removed from the Cypress Creek in Kerr County, right? Around it was a decade ago, around like 2013 or 2011, but we're seeing that it kind of got uncovered by a lot of journalists, and I think it's going to create a lot of you know finger pointing to begin with on who's responsible to not communicate the flood risk to the campers that were there. And it was a yeah.
Well, good morning, Sanjay. It's July 13. I have myself a cup of water to wash down a lot of this loss and tragedy in Central Texas. And anyone connected to families in Central Texas, it is a big loss, and we are mourning and giving space so that the truth can wash all over us. um uh yes, we're floodplain profession. I'm a certified floodplain manager. I have friends who are going to the technical summit in August to test and get that certified floodplain manager's experience, and we are emergency management staff. Are you emergency management staff, Sanjay?
So I have registered with the Texas EGRT. I think it's one of the like GIS based emergency service providers, uh, but I haven't been super active in the last few years, so I might have lost my membership or but I have been
Yeah,
trained
so we
to
have, go ahead,
understand.
sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, I took some training on how to respond to emergencies in regards to like mapping services. Um, yeah, that's kind of my limitation right now, but I'm
I wouldn't
getting
call it a
there.
limitation. It's an incredible skill that came into place, Winter Uri and all that stuff. These are emergency management staff that can work from home and help. And I work in the city of Austin. We have a very, very developed floodplain mapping and emergency management system. We train a lot, pretty much all of our staff to deal with this and to prepare for this type of stuff because we are in flash flood alley, and it's no surprise how these happen, but it always is a lot of endurance that we have to practice to continue because this work is very hard. That's why we have this podcast, because this work is very hard. So let's talk about the flooding and the lives and the property and the country of flooding, because we have, you know, Louisiana, Texas, Florida, we're along the hurricane coast, and hurricane season is coming. This was not a hurricane produced climatic event. This was, you know, a cell, like a swell. How would you describe what we're going to talk about today, Sanjay? Thank you, because I'm kind of a little overwhelmed by it. I was
Yeah, I
there
think
yesterday.
we'll take a deep dive on this topic. And for me, I wanted to first, give both sides, first the victims and then the regulators, enough of the like, okay, I get it. It's hard to keep up with everything at all times. It's very hard to understand your flood risk or your fire risk, your traffic vehicular accident risk, your uh, there are so many risks involved. So I totally acknowledge that firstly, and after that acknowledgement, I want to straight up jump up to the fact that the last 4 years or 3 years, we've known that El Nino year was coming up. We knew like it's a cycle. 4 years, every 4 years, there's a El Nino, La Nino period, and what happens is there's a lot of water vapors that get built up, and it takes around 4 or 5 years, and then every 4 or 5th year, there is a heavy torrential rain. There are hurricanes which get amplified due to the La Nina effect. So it's a very established science at this point, and it's taught at university level in like master's courses in water resources engineering. You cannot just say that, hey, we didn't know that it was coming. I think that's not an acceptable answer, um, because we knew ahead of time that this year was going to be very wet. That we knew that reservoirs will get filled up. There will be a lot of challenges in terms of how to route that water, and that kind of goes back to systems engineering problem, where I remember taking a water resource systems engineering class where you talk about all the reservoirs in Texas and how they all engage with each other, and how you make sure that you're releasing water from one without like making downstream impacts, and you do it in a way that it doesn't cause a lot of flooding, right, or loss of water. The site, so what happened was there was a very heavy rain. Some people are also pointing out that there was some cloud seeding activities done right before, and the site of Camp Mystic, which is I'm gonna be having that on my screen for a little bit, and yeah, Eduardo won't be able to see it, but the site of Camp Mystic, it's kind of located on a meandering river called Cypress Creek. And you can see that there is a dam or a small like uh, there's a small structure that's built to like store the water right upstream of the dam. And then just because the river is meandering, it creates a lot of like floodplain complexities that just simply cannot be mapped on a like FEMA flood study kind of thing, because these studies, they don't acknowledge these dams as like how much exactly they can store. How the dam storage also decreases over time because of sediment built up, and so many other things in regards to like the river itself meandering over time, that these studies just don't capture all that because of first engineering limitations at that time, like 2011 when the map was released, and also the limitations around like how much we do in terms of meandering rivers. And I just wanted to point out one more thing where City of Austin has one program where they do thing called erosion zone. So what they do is they make all the developments go through this erosion zone lengthy process where engineer has to look at the river over time and see how it meanders and create an erosion zone which kind of defines on like how the foundation will be built for that property. So with that being said, I think it's a lot that I just gave a monologue on, but it this finger pointing, I think first needs to stop. Like I think that that's very dishonest from both state and local and also national agencies, that they're just constantly always pointing fingers at one another. uh, the way FEMA process works, we know that they kind of make it look like, hey, we are the guys who are gonna map it, and we are doing it with an engineering study, and they don't explain it to you really like, hey, your site, is on a meandering river. We can't really like, give you the most accurate flood map for it because the river can change its path. They don't tell you like, we are not mapping like all the dams like at a detailed level of study. They just kind of push a regulatory product down to your as a local agency. And as a city or like a smaller city, we always talk about like the issues of like smaller cities in this podcast, where they don't really have a choice other than to like just accept the product as it is, as they published. And then sometimes the business owners, they push back on it, like saying like, hey, why did you put my site on the property? And I feel like that's too much, and they bring another engineer, and they would do a letter of map change, and those things happen. But without, and kind of taking a pause right here, what, Eduardo, like, how have you seen like this finger pointing or just like lack of accountability from like officials in around Kerr County? The I saw a video of the judge or being asked those questions, and I was like, I don't think the judge really knows too much about this subject. And at the same time, there there is a lot of, I think, finger pointing happening right now. How's your take?
Well, I think that was a really great kind of stream of consciousness explanation and description of that reflects my experience too, because these are very complicated disciplines, and finger pointing is not gonna get you anywhere really. It's just gonna put someone in jail, and that's not gonna solve the problem. And I think focusing on what the problem is important, like establishing we all have different problems. When we flood, some people flood a lot, some people just flood their garage, some people flood their yard, and they have different responses to that. So it's like, who are you responding to, first of all, is important, because they wouldn't have different ways of talking, right? Like if you want to provide, a, let's say someone lost their home, right? And they have property and they want to build a home again on their property because that's what they own. Um, then you will start to talk about how to work with that property. So that's one way to solve their problem is through property. There's other people that are like the campers that they have lost family. They cannot be remedied, and that's kind of like a legal word I'm using. Like if they are looking for someone to blame and they find that person, what could they even do, you know, to remedy, which is the legal recourse that they would have if there is a crime or a misdemeanor or any type of felony, perhaps. So it's kind of important to understand what is the platform of blame that we're talking about? Is this a legal platform of blame? Is this just an emotional, cathartic, like I suffer, so I want to see you equally suffer because that's the word of justice or something? And so I think it's important to ask the right questions in order to come to the right solution. And who's to blame doesn't really look like a a scientific question. It looks more like a legal question, right? So I think you're right to this is the way I think about it because I'm a little kind of in the weeds of communication, like legal communication. And I think what you said is asking this question to a judge seems right, but it's an engineering question. What's the flood risk? You're not asking a doctor what's the flood risk, you ask an engineer. You're not asking a businessman, you're asking an engineer. You're not asking a judge, should these homes be here? Because judges don't build homes, engineers build homes. And engineers also anticipate, like you said, the river meandering, the river erosion, and that relationship between the house, the structure, and the river is much more effective than other things, because that's a scientific perspective, is that you have this house that's a stable object, you have this river that's a dynamic object. Something's going to give, because stable objects, nature does not like them. Nature is free flowing, nature is free. And so engineers have to engineer a home as the science gets better. So I think I, my perspective on this tragedy is that our tools that we have now are so strong, and our uh, policy is so slow that it hasn't integrated them yet. Because, like, you and I can see how many tools we could have used, like sirens, like maps, like, I don't know, some other form of or I don't know, it was dark. So, but you can think, we can brainstorm things. But right now, the question is, who's to blame, I guess. So that's my response to you. Does that make sense? Because I think about it like, let's think about the victims first, what has gone through them, and then we'll figure out who to blame later, because there are judges and there is police and there is a criminal and felony system in the United States. And I respect it, and I want people to go through the right steps before you get to the judge, because if you get to the judge with the wrong information, they're going to throw your case out, and I don't want people to lose free money. It's not free money, but I don't want people to lose their equity in
And
this situation.
and I think you raised a very important like the responsibility of the engineers, right? Like, at the end of the day, it's the water resource engineers, the civil engineers that designed the structure, the ones that made the flood map or try to, communicate the flood risk. Because there are people who are getting paid a lot of money who to communicate these risks. So we cannot say that, oh, we need to, like, create this role like who communicates this risk to people, because those roles already exist. A lot of people make a lot of money pushing out these flood maps. It takes around 7 years or 8 years to go through one cycle of flood map update. um, for one county. It gets done on a very large scale, like statewide, but still, it takes a long time to update those flood maps. A lot of money is spent by the government on this. I want always, go back to this origins of the engineering license, right? Like in Texas, it was one of the first states that started it, and it was because a school building was poorly designed and it caught fire because there was a methane gas leak or a gas leak in general, and a lot of kids died. And that kind of pushed the state to create the professional engineering license, and it then spread to all the other states in this country. And I think this is one of those times where us as engineers, we have to come step up and take accountability. I mean, that I don't know if there should be any um, you know repercussions or, like, gross negligence that comes up, uh, because engineering firms were involved during this mapping process, and there is a concept of, like, was there a negligence involved? There's a statement in contracts like how much negligence was there, whose part was that negligence on? Was it from the engineer? Was it from the regulators who pushed it to, like, use lower codes? Was it? I don't. But the point is, this this is one of the times when us as engineers, instead of saying, like you said, like, hey, we didn't have the tools, we didn't have the money, we didn't have that, we need to take accountability that, hey, we had the money, we had the tools. The policy may not have been, like, as stringent, but we could have done better communicating the flood risk, because we've been spending a lot of hours on a lot of rivers all over the United States. And that's, I think, one of my big takeaways is, I think there needs to be a precedent set by somebody on, like, who gets to at least, say or speak up whether they made an error, while delineating the flood map, because an engineer definitely, reviewed that when that request was made to remove certain buildings from the flood map. While it was approved by FEMA, an engineer must have submitted that report to say, hey, these structures are not in the floodplain. I'm not judging, how they came up with that conclusion, whether they thought maybe the dam was big enough to protect the floodplain, whether they didn't account for like all the upstream reservoirs that will just, release all the water at the same time. Not going to judge that part, but just at this time, I think we need to step up and say like, hey, we could have done better. We could have been like, hey, taken 5 more minutes or like a little bit more time to re-evaluate the risk and be like, hey, I'm not going to sign on this one because I don't think that these buildings should be out of floodplain. And we have to make those decisions quite frequently as water resource engineers. When I've been involved in this FEMA BLE process pretty much all of my career, and I have to like or FEMA regulatory products and base level engineering both, and we have to make those decisions quite frequently in a split second time when we have to like just delineate the floodplain in a way whether some buildings get into the floodplain, some don't, and that's based on our experience. That's based on what guidance is there at that time. It's based on the elevation model of the site and a lot more factors. But when these like letter of map changes go through, that's where it's not a split second. You get a lot of time to really think about that, like whether that one structure needs to be removed out of floodplain. And I think that's a very very specific thing. And I was definitely it could be that I'm always trying to blame myself for just could be like my personal attitude towards thing where I try to take accountability. And I feel like if that would have came to me as an engineer, I probably would have taken a little bit more time to review it and say that okay, I don't think this structure should be out of floodplain because of the meandering nature of the river or the dam, like how close that is to the dam. Or I would have at least told them like, hey, you have to raise your structure by 3 feet. All the camps should be raised by 3 feet. And I was just talking earlier to my wife, and I was like, maybe if we had raised those 3 feet, maybe that would have given us like 3 more minutes to evacuate those sites. Uh, and it's again, it's very disheartening that we
Yeah,
cannot
there's a
provide.
lot to think about, Sanjay, but let's kind of think about the victims and the audience of the show, because they're coming to us for answers, like, or at least a glimpse into the engineering and the water resources as a resource. Because there's like the dark part of it, and let's look at the other part of it too. I was in Kingsland, Texas, and I was speaking with a lady in the morning. Her name is Bonnie, and we were watching the water go over this crossing. And we parked our cars up on the bank before the river, before the road goes down. We walk down, and water's still going over that street, so you can't cross it. Um, and it's almost like probably 50 feet wide of water just rushing over. And I took my shoes off. I went to go, splash in it, and it's strong. That's a strong current. It could take me if I fell down, but I didn't fall down. And so she said that Lake Buchanan was at like 499 feet or something. And then it gained 15 feet of water. So it's 15 feet deeper of water. Granted, there's a lot of sediment, so it's not the same volumetric that we would read. But we did get a ton of water. did we recover any of our drought? Like, let's talk about like water as a resource, since that's another kind of point of, I don't know, I'm interested in is like, how are the fish? How are the shrimp? We got a ton of water. Did the water drain away or did we keep it? Um, are you comfortable if we change routes to some of the more intricate
Yeah,
parts instead of the more sad parts?
definitely. And so I have on my screen here a post by Dr. Mace where he talks about what the water levels are at different lakes. So Lake Buchanan is at 85.5% full, and it's still rising. And then Lake Travis is at 70% full. Canyon Lake is at 64% full. Medina Lake more than doubled its storage a month ago, but it's 5.2% full today compared to 2.3% a month ago. Uh,
Doubled.
so the water level has gone up in a lot of lakes all over central Texas, and that's a good news for sure. I think, but at
But
the
it's
same time,
hotter now, so it's going to evaporate faster. So it's kind of like, how do we tighten our science?
yes, and Dr. Mays also said that he was looking at Barton Springs, and it's still in stage three critical drought, and yeah, I
Yeah.
think um, we have recovered quite a bit in central Texas from the massive drought we had. And going back to my previous point, like we kind of knew like this was a El Nino year. We're going to get large storms. We knew we would get, these reservoirs filled up, maybe not to 90%, but we knew it would bring us more water. And yeah, it's been definitely a breath of fresh air for a
How
lot
did
of
you
people.
know that? Through the weather gauges or like through the weather balloons? How did you know that? How do we know as people that there's an El Nino year? And like, do you have data, rain gauges? I know you have the internet, but are there physical structures? Because when I was doing my flood response, because I did do investigations on people that flooded, some people were like, if we had a rain gauge over here and then I had a blare over there, people were like trying to direct me to install stuff. And so, like, what's the best stuff to install? So yeah, like, I'm curious, Sanjay.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this map. It probably the data kind of gets derived from NOAA, like National Oceanic Agency, and they have a thing called Oceanic Nino Index, and it basically repeats every like 2 to 7 years, where there are large rainfall years, and then there is drought, and then there is large rainfall, and then there is drought. So it's very cyclical, I would say. Um, and it's never like okay, it's gonna always repeat in 4 year interval, but it's kind of like between 2 and 7, and it just repeats itself. But we kind of know every year ahead of time, because we the NOAA monitors the rain patterns being built up in the oceans, and it can see like, okay, the pressure is changing in that part of the world, and so there will be more rainfall in the other part of the world. And it's also called a butterfly effect or something similar, where they say if a butterfly flaps its wings in South Korea, then a few years later there's a big rainfall in the United States. And it's a very thought provoking and philosophical, I think. But yeah. Oh, you're muted.
It's true. I actually study chaos theory and the butterfly effect. It's like a non-linear system. And so you have non-linear mathematics. And over the weekend, I was like, man, if we taught students about non-linear mathematics early in their elementary education, they would already know so much about the weather, because weather is a non-linear relationship between like heat, pressure, humidity, um, gravity is involved, Coriolis effect, and all of this you can model. Like, that's the part that,
Yeah.
like, that's why you and I get caught up, is because we know about nonlinear dynamics and we have like these systems of analysis that take into account this flapping of the wings of the butterfly. It's like, it's not nuclear science. It's just water science. It's like we know water. So that's why, yeah, I love this conversation. I don't know what your question was. Did you ask a question?
No, I'm just
I
saying
got
that
caught up.
it is a very established science, and it's studied by various scholars, PhD researchers, scientists, and
Uh,
we have, and then
Can I nerd
there's,
out a little bit? Can I nerd
yes,
out a little
go
bit?
ahead.
Because the reason I love America, I'm not American, but the reason I love America is because I love math. And during the war, um, America did break these crazy translation codes, the Enigma code, because there were people doing war on people. And you can solve these war problems, these natural resource emergencies, with mathematical thinking, with scientific thinking, strategic communication, scientific language is created because the symbols are meaningful. The butterflies are out in the real world and the wind is picking up. So, like, I went to Boston to MIT because there is the, I forget the name, but he studied nonlinear systems and created a lot of Lorenz. Yeah, Edward Lorenz. And he's one of the popularizers of nonlinear mathematical engineering thinking, like meteorology. This dude came up with the freaking elementary foundational math that created the actual algebra of um, meteorology as we see it on the computer today. And so there is a deep scientific, I wouldn't call it American made, but popularized by America in their endeavors through the world. And you know what America used to do? They used to get scientists from war-torn countries, bring them to their universities, and then solve the war. Like that's what America does. We just get scientists from other countries and help make peace around the world. That's at least my ideology. And it's related to my practice of science and all this. That's my nerd out moment. Um, how do you think about weather science and how do you love it?
Yeah, it's funny you said you went to MIT to check that out, and I also
I didn't study there. I just went to visit.
same thing. I also went to visit the campus and one time, and it was it was during winter times. It was like really snowing everywhere. I totally like just was feeling like a little kid watching the campus buildings and just thinking about how many great minds have, contributed to this amazing institution. And yeah, it was a great moment.
Yeah, Edward Lorenz came up with this idea, just to nerd out a little bit more, of the Lorentz oscillator, which is a system like an orbiting system in 3D and also in complex imaginary space that can compute an orbit, but on top of that, it can like has another algebra. So you can do like real algebra while keeping the imaginary algebra. And it's just such an amazing philosophical mathematical concept, like the oscillator. And
Mm.
pendulums are oscillators. They go like this, but then if they go all the way around, then that becomes a chaotic system. And the Lorentz oscillator kind of helps us talk about chaotic systems in a way that makes sense and that is trackable in time. So you can like open a chaotic system and undo it and then try another track and then undo it. But yeah, like you said, you have to be incredibly good at that model to be able to re- get repeatable-ish results because life is chaotic and it's hard to repeat it. Yeah. But anyways, that's my last thing on Edward Lorenz and oscillators and math.
That's where like Google has this product with DeepMind, one of their companies, where they have built this meteorological model using AI, and it has outperformed several like statistical models by a lot. It's been able to predict like the more common, next day weather events at much higher accuracy than other models. And I'm not like super, familiar with like whether it predicted, the recent flooding at to what accuracy, but I think that's something that I'll probably look into, that, Google DeepMind model myself, and then I'll probably have some interesting tidbits in the next episode if I get to find it. But let's jump to the will and the strength of Texas as a community, the amount of community response that we've seen in the last few weeks, last 1 week actually, and how much community matters to Texans and our beloved companies, how they have come together. There have been posts on Instagram and other social media sites about how if you eat at this restaurant on this day, all the proceeds will go to the Kerr County flood relief. And then if you do yoga at this place on this time, that will go to this. So it's been I think that response and that fast response has been very heartwarming for me and just uplifting. On I've never seen that before. I mean, I've seen Hurricane Harvey firsthand, but even then, I was in College Station. It was happening in Houston, and I didn't like quite connect with all the disaster response effort that was happening at that time. Um, but this one, being in Central Texas and connecting to all the Central Texas ecosystem, that's all our Instagram pages, like all our you know I love Peter's Burger. Big shout out to them. They have I think 14 locations all over Austin. They said, hey, if you guys come and eat here, all our profits go to Kerr County flood effort. I think they were able to raise maybe $25 million, so like a huge number, or maybe 2 million. I don't know, but millions of dollars raised by one fast food joint in one day. Then we had HEB. So HEB was founded in Kerrville, Texas, and within like hours of the storm and flood event, I had videos on my TikTok of HEB trucks with big like logos written the disaster relief, and they were like I think driving from San Antonio to Kerrville, and that was on my TikTok feed. Like how much was happening like on the ground like in San Antonio because Austin's 2 hours away from Kerrville. I think San Antonio is one, and people from Austin, like the drone face, the drone community, they were driving there to capture pictures. The people who had free time that they were just lining up to volunteer. People are like, who had free cash are giving money for donations. So how has the like that's my Austin view. What's your San Antonio view on like what happened in the last or 1 week or it's still happening?
Well, San Antonio is not as much of I guess I'm not as connected to San Antonio as you are to the youth of Austin because we're broke, bro. Like in San Antonio is a broke ass town. And it's getting broker by the day. And so I don't want to make light of the context of the flood. It was already in a place of um like it's been hard. I will say that as much as I would like to accept and be agreeable to the dance between capitalism and mutual aid as a concept, um, I love Pizzeria, by the way. Their vegetarian patty is one of the
Yeah,
good ones. Is one of the really
yes,
good ones. Yeah. And their fries are super good too. I like how they put their fries in their little baggie and
yeah,
just
it's like a
twist it.
cone, yeah,
It's
paper
just
cone.
perfect. Um, but yeah, like for me, it's like mixing business with pleasure, which I don't like to do. I love Texas. I know Texas is my home, is my heart, and it's my response to be like, of course, everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing, but they could do more, and that's my problem. Um, I like to see it. I expected, I kind of demanded that people respond to this, but they should have already been responding to an ongoing crisis of houselessness. So I have been on the mutual aid kind of fringe. I've heard about mutual aid during first Uri. My friend called me and he was like, I'm at HEB, my car's stuck, I can't get home. I got all these waters. That's my car's full and I can't get home. I was like, oh man, what the heck? I can't help you. I'm in San Antonio with my own thing. So in my own experience, these have been happening more and more. So I feel perfectly connected to those. I'm happy to see that others are getting better, stronger. But like we have to ask ourselves, like, what's happening here? How come we've had to respond to more and more emergencies every year? Like me, I didn't even used to know about. Now I'm a professional, so I love life. I love how we all take care of each other. But we have the time now because it stopped raining to think like, why does this continue to happen? Um, because I expect it will happen again. So I'm happy to see it, but I'm overcome by I still am mourning, I would say. Like right now is not time for me to it's not time, it's not a joyful time at the moment. Although I'm happy and probably buoyed and motivated to see that. It's I'm still not at a place where I'm like I'm happy yet. How do you feel?
So I have, so I think there is a thing called non-profit industrial complex. I don't know if how much you agree with that term, but
Yeah.
um, I
Oh,
think
I think I agree, but tell me more. I've never heard that, but I want to know everything.
yeah. So there are a lot of non-profits that are set up to basically absorb all the funding that kind of comes through these disasters. Um, what happens is so
Agreed. Agreed. That is a counterpoint, but I want to share that. I share that point with you.
yeah.
It's a
So
countercultural to say that, but it's true.
yeah, it's very interesting. Like, it's something that, I've definitely, I came from India, so, I was very poor in India, and I could see, like, hey, all this, money being spent by the government, why is it never reaching the, poor people, and in society? And that's the same problem in other countries, but this is totally different. Like, the American thing is it's kind of mind blowing. Like, it's very embedded into the system. It is,
How about $44 billion into
yeah,
ice? But let's talk about the water right now.
yeah. It's America is very interesting to me, like how they do things, and especially this. There are several non-profits which basically. Let me start with this. They pay their executives close to $2 million a year, up to $10 million a year. So if you are a CEO or you're in the executive committee or the board or one of the people who are close to the CEO, you're making close to $5 million a year as a person who works at a nonprofit, which is supposed to help the people out. And it's not one nonprofit; it's hundreds. So I can't even name one. I mean, of course, I know a few on top of my head, but I can't name one because there's just there are hundreds and thousands
I
of
would
them.
actually encourage to try to say their names less and less if we want to be effective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the funding will come, like always, and then all the non-profits and for-profits company will just absorb it. And then what they do is they put it on the administrative fee. So if, for example, one person wants to apply for usually we were talking about how, property owners who just lost their house, what happens to them. So they want to apply for a funding, and it takes them, first of all, months and maybe years to see a single penny, and it never is enough because it and then on top of that, the people who are like doing, the site visit there and then taking the damage assessment pictures, the people who are going there to distribute food or other things, they are like they're costing money to the government, which you could like in this age when there's like a P2P transfer, like I can cash app you like $100 right now, and you can cash app me like 50 or Venmo me. We're like just so easy to just like transfer money without like a third party. Um, there is so much like regulatory overburden, or which is created by these nonprofits themselves. So they would be like, hey, we're going to review the application. So they will spend thousands of dollars reviewing that application. They'll go back to the person. They'll like, for example, let's say a person lived close to the river and then they lost their house. They will ask FEMA for or state or any agency for like a $500,000 assistance just to rebuild their house because that's how much it costs now. Like they're not asking for like more, they're not asking for less. They're just like, hey, can I just rebuild it? I don't want it to be like two stories if it was one. I just want it to be the same thing. Maybe just raise it a little bit, just so that I don't get impacted in the next flood. And that's kind of the gist of it. But then all these people will come who'll be like, hey, let me evaluate this. Let me see if you are right, or like let me see, I'm the expert, or
Can I tell
I'm
you who I think is the administrative state that you're talking about?
it's a lot.
Can I throw a word?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Because I think this hogwash, which is just extra money, you said, for just administrative costs, that money is going to the courts through the Federalist Society. So I think all of the money that the government is taking, taxing us on, and that they're going to tax us on, is going to go to the courts. And then they're going to be like, it's going to be $300 if you don't show up. It's going to be 30, 300, and they'll tax you and they're going to get it out of you. If they put you in jail, they're going to get that money from the government. So I will say that the nonprofit industrial complex is the court system. So do you agree or disagree? I think it's a court system.
I think I haven't given much thought on like you're talking about. I think you're talking about the
I'm talking about
end point.
the criminals and the people that are going to get the money out of this disaster is going to be the courts. And the people who try to sue the courts are not going to win because the perpetrator is someone else. It's not the courts, but I think the courts are the people that actually get the money through nonprofit channels, um, based on the Glass-Steagall Act, of dark money in politics. I think that's what we're talking about, dark money in politics. In the nonprofit sector, yeah, the court system is that nonprofit sector. That's my proposal.
I think you've much more nurtured this thought in your head, and you're able to like like espresso it much more than I am. So you might be
Like
onto
the
something.
homeless people, because they're homeless now, that are not going to get the money, they're going to have their day in court and they're not going to win because the money's already there. The money that should go to them is already spent on the
Yeah.
police. You know, we're already we already spent the money we budgeted last week, 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
that should have gone to them. It's already we've already the Americans have already decided what to do with that money, so they have to wait till next year.
Is it specific to the Kerr County or is it like in general?
I would say the money is everywhere. The money's everywhere, and it's gonna go where it needs to be, right? Because, like you said, I could just transfer it to you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, there's so
No
much like
middleman there.
there's no I can just send it to you like this doesn't even have any processing fee anymore to like charge. Like it's just free to send money to people. And this whole system is it's just I haven't
It's a
like
tragedy. It's a real
eh,
tragedy, but we got a bunch of water and we have a lot of skills. And so we can build more homes, but we need to figure out where because the river it's it's changed. So now some banks are lower, probably by 10 feet. I went to the Llano River, it looks completely different. So flood risk has changed. We need new studies. We need money. The rivers have
yeah.
changed.
I'm actually also planning to visit Kerrville and see everything myself because I don't think the pictures are doing justice. It's hard to understand the scale of this whole thing, especially like you're saying, if the river has changed 10 feet. Um,
Well, it changes all the time. That's kind of the thing about rivers. We don't visit them as much, but people like me and you can and do. And so we know how it changes, and it's just no one's listening to like what's happening to the river. That's why we have the Water Lobby podcast because the river is the source uh, of our burgers. I went to a restaurant that just opened up and they make their own tortillas. They grow their own masa and they probably make their own milk. I don't know, but it's like a straight farm to market. Yeah, that's America, farm to market. And it's all grown in Texas. We have water for business. So let's make good business out of it. You know, we don't have to suffer because we have water and we know what to do with it. And so it's kind of like a silver lining to a real tragedy. What do you, I don't know. I'm kind of yeah. This is
Yeah.
I'm very interested in this money conversation
I
because
wanted to,
it's a money conversation. It's billions of
yeah.
dollars.
Again, just wanted to emphasize on just the water part of it and the water availability and the water bill for 1 second.
Oh
So
yeah, ratepayers.
yeah, so this is county line water that I'm sharing one post about, but it's all of the private water uh, companies in Texas that have doubled pretty much the rate of the water. So this person on Facebook group said, a family of four used 32,000 gallons of water, which is worth $600 between 318 and 421. So just a month. And they said there were no leaks in the irrigation system. And the county line water said it was a reasonable amount of water for my house. And yeah, I think that just blew my mind because $600 for 1 month of water bill, uh, it's kind of outrageous. Then there is another post of County Line SUD in which they basically show current rate. So for until if you're using in Texas, it's kind of a lot of them do based on consumption. So if you're using up to 5,000 gallons, um, then your rate is $4.36. But that was until February of 2025, and they have doubled that to $9.15 per 1,000 gallons. And then if you are using over 25,000, that's also again doubled from $11 to $22. So pretty much across the board. So it doesn't matter if you are a poor customer or somebody who's trying to conserve water and only using up to 5,000 gallons or 10,000 gallons. Across the board for every single category, they have just doubled the water rates. And that same thing is also with Aqua Texas, another large water utility who has doubled the water rates pretty much. So I think that has kind of really made me really like suspicious first of the water industry. Uh, First, because I don't think it should be like personally, I don't think it should be legal to double the water rates in 1 year. You know, again, I'm not a legal expert, I'm not a judge, but it's up to the courts to decide. But it shouldn't be allowed to double it. Period. I think there should be a mechanism to like maybe increase it by the rate, whatever the rate of inflation is over years, or uh, to make sure that the utilities are functioning. But you know water is a basic right, like of everyone,
It is a basic right. And well, it's thank you for sharing that perspective, the suspicion of the water industry, because it's my suspicion too. Like I put it in the very first episode. I'm like, if we don't have water and there's dirty water and we can clean it, why don't we clean the water? And it's because there is no profit motive to a mass industrialization of a water cleaning system does not produce profit for one person. It produces success and beauty for everyone, right? Because water is something where you have a little of it or you have a lot of it, it really doesn't pay you anything unless you have people exploiting water, like fishing it or swimming in it, or, recreation is pollution sometimes. And that's how you make money out of water is by making it dirty. So water can get dirty because it makes sense, it makes money to, just leave it as it is. Um, and so I've been suspicious. So just thank you. I'm suspicious of the water industry as well because um, it that sentence doesn't make any sense. The water industry is anything and everything. Is the whole world is the water industry, in my point of view. So the the lobbying I would like to share as a response to your suspicion is that we're all suspicious of the industry. It's not just you, it's not just me, it's everyone. And then we turn to the justice system to be like, am I right or am I wrong? Because this is like, I have no other recourse. You go to the judge and be like, I'm suspicious of the water industry, judge. What are you gonna, like, did I mess up? Did I not pay enough? Am I too broke to live?
Yeah.
Or
Because
was I stealing? Because that's what they're going to say, that you were stealing resources, that you were looting, and that wasn't yours during an emergency. And they have done that in the past,
and
that we
let's
can loot. But that's, yeah, it's not, we don't have, it's just the natural state of affairs. But I
and
think
you
it's fair
talk
and scientific.
yeah,
Done.
you talked about earlier that San Antonio is getting poor. I see some, I mean, of course, Austin has seen a lot of boom in the past.
I'll say my family's getting poor, and the people that I speak with are not finding jobs. So that's what I mean. I don't have any
I
scientific data to say that.
I think I 100% agree with. Maybe my friend circle is also similar to yours, but I know people who are GIS analysts who don't have jobs right now, who got laid off recently. I know CAD people who were recently laid off. I know musicians, artists who are really struggling for getting a gig which pays like $100. It's so that's the scale which I'm seeing, and then I wanted to just contrast like what an average person makes in San Antonio or in Austin or anywhere in the US. I think it's the national, maybe like, I don't know, 80,000, say 40,000 is like, what average person makes somewhere between. But at the end of the day, after all the taxes and stuff, most people get $3,000 to $4,000 a month after taxes and stuff, right? And if you have to pay $400 to water, $200 for gas, for another 400 for electricity, that's $1,000 just gone out of your paycheck where you haven't even paid your rent, and that's another thousand plus dollars for rent. If you're living in a shared space with multiple people, that's and then you haven't even brought like any food to the table yet, and you're already lost more than half your paycheck. And what I've heard from the water industry people is that, hey, the rates of water have been so low for so long that we have to increase it. But I'm like, hey, did you really have to increase it, or is it because all these, AI and data center is like using so much water, so much electricity? So now you didn't prepare for it. Like, it wasn't my fault that you didn't do a capex expenditure over the last 2 decades to build up to, like, what would be needed for millions of gigawatts of power and millions of gallons of water that would be needed for the industrial activity or the growth that the country is looking for. Like, is it my fault that you didn't prepare for it? But and now you're charging me like twice as much as you charging last year for water and electricity and uh, internet and phone, like the basic utilities, every single one across the board has doubled. My paycheck has not doubled. Make it make sense, Eduardo. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, well, the way I make it make sense is to identify, do you see a problem in leadership,
Oh,
Sanjay?
100%. I think.
Okay, so I think that's the problem. Is your problem is you see a lack of leadership. My problem is I see a lack of negotiation power. I see a lack of desire to negotiate with power behind you. I see a lack of strategy in building consensus before you go out and meet the authorities. Like you go out and meet the authorities by yourself. What do you think this is? 1800? No, it's 2100 now. We need to think strategically. We need to think with advanced technology. I was reading a comic book. It's the Ninja Turtles, and they're imagining themselves in a Manhattan Island closed off, right? And so we really need to update our tech. We need to update our leadership tech. You're doing it every day. I'm sorry. That's the best we can do. Is what we got. Get people out to talk about their important things. Go out and participate in your art. Art is truly healing. We've healed what we can, but we'll continue to heal. Where the sense is that you're right. That's actually the how do I make it make sense? Is that you're right. So how do we escalate? So we escalate things together, and it's not an escalation, it's an oscillation. And that's where people get worked up. They think that when you get worked up, you become maybe violent, but that's not fair. I think we've had a mindset of blaming people so that we can get justice. We've been talking a lot about justice, but we don't even know what justice is. So I think it's a philosophical question. Like, how do we get something that's fair? How do our judges treat us? Because our judges are the symbol of fairness in this society, at least. The way that America was founded is that the judges are right. The judges are the market and landowners. When we wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, it says that the land owning wealth class will be fair, more fair than the king. The way that this makes sense is we stop asking real human questions about leadership. At least in your case, who's the leader here? And how can I make a challenge? Because I trust the challenging system, but I don't trust the results. So maybe we don't trust the system of challenge, or maybe you're not giving a fair opportunity to challenge the leadership. But I think it's that when we challenge the existing power structure, it's not fair. So that's why I continue to be like, the judges are getting paid off by us because they're not playing nice. The refs are getting paid. That's the way it makes sense to me. I think a lot in sports analogies, and I think the ref here is getting paid off. That's what I make sense. I also think that what you said, leadership is lacking. Yes, I think leadership lacks a valid perspective that makes sense to a lot of people. We don't have power, we don't have money, but I think we have the truth. And I think we just be patient with the truth, and continue to uh, survive. I think that's what we're doing. We're surviving and helping others to survive. And if we don't make it, the people that will make it will help others survive. So that's the way I look at it. It's a very prophetic type of communication I'm trying to produce. It's very artistic. It is not 100% correct, but it is attempting to just stay with a desire to get to the other place, I moved. I moved address. I'm gonna move again because this is not the end. This is my story.
So, Eduardo, I have a I think I kind of understood you this time when you talked about, the refs being paid off. I think that hit hit me hard. So, I had a follow up on, like, it's a little different, but let's see if somebody who lived in Kerr County or Round Rock, a community which was, deeply impacted by the flooding, and they lost, let's say, a street light or any community asset that was they're part of that, and now it gets really dark during the night time, and they cannot, if it's dark, it leads to all sorts of other issues. Crime increases and everything. So if they just want one lamp, one street light back, what do they need to do? Like, do they contact a council person? Do they contact the, I don't know, the electric agency, that ERCOT or whoever does it? Do they contact their HOA? Do
You
they
need
like
to, well, you need to contact your municipality, make an email, make a request or a phone call. If there is no municipality at your time of interest, call your representative. You leave a message. They're going to follow up with you or not, or their voicemail is going to be full. But the strategy is call either your homeowners association so they can be your representative, call your municipality, your right of way manager, public works. Most municipalities have a city engineer. It's part of their charter. If they're in America, if you're in another country, I don't know how they charter your little towns. But yeah, there is a city chartering process, and there is an emergency management or just a city management network. So first, the city manager, then city engineer. Um, if they respond to you, follow that. If you have none of that, but you have a land development code, then identify the land development code and identify if there's even a market for that. It's light bulb and stand because you're going to need a concrete base because the wind loads on that thing, depending on how high it is, it could be a liability. So it's you eventually need to design it. It is a design question, but who's got the power to use design correctly? That is a difficult question to answer because it requires a structure of government and it requires a way to express government power.
And speaking of like power, why should people be more involved in the local mayor race than than their presidential race? Or like, how does I've been a little bit following the mayoral race in New York. Zoran Mamdani has made quite a progress from 5% to like almost now. I think he has won the Democratic primaries. And why should people be more involved in like who their mayor is? And what are some like issues you're seeing there?
Yeah, I think the primary issue for me, of course, is the data centers and the water and the ratepayer conversation because you said that's double. This is not a linear system. This is a non-linear system we're talking about. And so doubling something doesn't mean it's going to be twice as hard. It means it's going to be 100 times as hard in this situation because you're dealing with a very critical part of the system, which is your water bill. That's a huge part of your self stability is that you can pay that bill. Um, and so that's why I think they should be aware of who's going to be making those decisions because it hasn't been established in some municipalities who makes those decisions. I think the confusion of local and federal politics, I just think the confusion of politics overall is part of the game of politics. Once you get to high level gameplay, um, it's called mind games. Have you heard of that word, mind games?
I have in Love Island, USA.
Yeah, and so that's a real thing that happens in human society amongst clans of people, amongst warring factions, amongst opposing energies or forces. In the duality of life, we have factions that perform mind games. And there's people that are not involved that get caught up in the middle. And I think people like me, people like you, are caught up in the middle of the mind games of political forces. Um, and that they are Republicans and Democrats, and they're making it confusing for everyone involved. And that's why I think we should just stop paying attention to them and start paying attention to your neighbors, to your local council members, because they're from your district. They are people that, if you want to figure out who they are and meet them, you actually can. Like you can go out and talk to them because they are accessible, because they are only accessible to you. So people love the president role, people love the anti-president, people like Soran Mandani, but they live in New York. They have their own problems over there. They don't even have drainage systems like we do over here. They're not they don't know how flooding works. It's New York. We're in Texas. We're better. I'm sorry, but we're better than New York. So that's me getting competitive, but it's mind games. I think a lot of our confusion is mind games are very powerful entities that have gotten even more powerful. I think the political parties and the courts have gotten very, very powerful, but I don't know any of them. I live here in San Antonio with my aunt, and I have my front yard and my backyard, and I got a lot of bills to pay. And the people at City Hall, I've met them because they told me when and where, and I went, and they were taking questions. And so
And
that is real humanity.
and I think this is I would say that this is an open invitation for people who are in power. If you are a judge, if you are person who is in council or anywhere in who has decisions or makes decisions around water, you have similar issues, contact us, right? Like let us know if you want to be on the podcast, and we'll have the conversation, right? Because we can't get to you. It's hard for us, but if other way around, we'll be happy to have you guys.
Or construction, because your question about the streetlight, that was an actual project I had. So I was talking to Bonnie in Llano, Texas, and I was telling her like it was dark when it was raining, but on nights where it storms, it's especially darker because the moon is covered by the clouds. So like a dark and stormy night, it's actually a darker and stormy night because it's darker than a normal night. And I was like, I never noticed that until me and Bonnie were talking. And it's different. And so yeah, I think um the construction of a street light, that's an engineering feat depending on how you do it. Because I did have a low water crossing that had flooded multiple times. And I told them, let's just break it down. And they told me, we're not going to break down the low water crossing. I said, it's dangerous. And no one lives here yet. So
Yeah.
take it down before people actually live here and, start driving over it. They didn't. But they put a street light to be like, okay. So at least people will know when it's underwater
Yeah.
with street light. So it's called the flood early warning system. That's what that is. A flood
Nice.
early warning system. If it's close to a low water crossing, and we funded it. Okay, yeah, it was low water crossing. It was an engineering. I like the street light conversation. If anyone installs street lights, come on to the show.
Streetlight would also be part of the flood early warning system, but I think it makes so much sense when you said it.
It's all about how you sell it, and I'm good at selling. But that's our episode. I think we've been talking a lot. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was a good discussion for sure. I definitely had more thoughts than I would have at this time of the day, But um, yeah, what is your plan for rest of the day and weekend? I am gonna go and do a cold plunge. I don't know what you do.
Yeah, I'm going to see my sister. It's her birthday this weekend, so I'm gonna go buy her a little gift. I hope she likes it. And then I'm gonna clean my room.
Okay.
It's a little,
But
how
you,
about you?
yeah, you did just move into this new room, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
You already
How's
made it dirty.
All right, every day. I'm an artist, so I'm always working on something. I'm always making a mess. And so I need my studio always ready, at the ready to produce.
Yeah, so yeah, I'll be going to a cold plunge event in Austin, and I think so. I recently did another cold plunge where the water temperature was around like 53 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's definitely like it's interesting. I never thought I would like it. I still don't like it. I mean, it's terrible to your like it's kind of shocking putting your body through a shock. But I did it on Friday, like right after work, and I felt like kind of a relaxation that I wouldn't feel like, on a Friday because I did a sauna and then did a cold plunge and my mind was like immediately relaxed and I was like outside, my work headspace and I was more like, in um, different kind of like, headspace and I liked it. I liked that experience, so I'm gonna do that.
I was thinking about that, like it's a traumatic experience on the body,
Yeah.
but then like once you recover from it, you're like, whoa, that felt kind of, I've never done it, but I've been cold before.
Yeah, your feet, like it's again, another water thing. I just love doing things around water, like paddle boarding, doing kayaking, going on boats. I mean, I don't get invited to boats, but whenever I do, and then doing, this sauna, cold plunge, taking showers, swimming, surfing. I want to learn surfing one day.
Oh,
Planning
cool.
something to like maybe get some classes and learn it. So, and
Well, cool. I hope you enjoy your plunge. Yes, sir.
I did. I just came back from Colombia, the country in Bogota, Colombia, and I was like, they have one of the best like drainage infrastructure that I've ever seen. Everything's connected because it was a master
Did you
plan
take a
for.
picture? Did you take a picture?
I took a few pictures. It's on somewhere on Instagram, but I think I'll write blog post or something to kind of cover all that my journey
Oh.
in Bogota. But we'll see. Um, but yeah, I think it's always good. I love like looking at ditches, channels, drains, pipes.
You gave me a great idea, Sanjay. Thank you. I'm gonna make my water blog.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It'll be great. And then I also yeah, I might go to Kerrville. I've been wanting to go to Kerrville for a while, and I think the water rain and stuff has stopped. So if I get a chance, I might drive there and just so it's just give. I like being in that headspace where I can really think creatively, and I can. I mean, I have been posting about this like on LinkedIn and stuff, like how we should have had, flood early warning sensors in houses, just similar to like fire alarms, which could, detect water or moisture in the home and kind of, give you that warning to leave because, it's like happened in the night time and, I don't expect people to like wake up from their sleep when there is raining outside, but, if there was a flood or alarm, it would have worked. But I think I really want to like be in the area, like physically be there because I think that will flow some creative juices and I'm ready for that experience, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely a small market for that. Because people live everywhere. That's the thing, is like people live everywhere and water is everywhere. So let's figure it out.
Well, you have fun, Eduardo, and I'll post this and see how people react.
Oh yeah. When is the end of the episode? Is the end of the episode right now? Or was it when was it?
Yeah, now.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow, we just kept on talking today. I was really excited today about this one.
And we'll see how people are excited as well. We've gained some traction, so let's see.
You gave me a great idea of like a water blog. I want you to read my water blog when I make it.
Definitely. I'm thinking of just like, putting together like what I saw in my journey in Bogota, like all the features I saw. Maybe I think that that might be interesting to some people because myself, I would never think of those things, unless I'm traveling to a different city, and it's just very fun and interesting way to look at, how people deal with drainage and flooding because it rains there all every day, like every day it rains there. So
I
they
have a
have.
coworker and she tells me that too. She was like, I went back home to India and I couldn't stop thinking about drainage. I was like, me too. I went back home to Mexico. I couldn't stop thinking about drainage.
It's
So we've changed.
yeah, it is very captivating and
Yeah.
thought-provoking idea.
Okay. Well, um, nice to see you, Sanjay. Thank you for reminding me that I'm doing a show today. We're doing a show today. Always a professional.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.